You're standing between two wooden posts on a frozen pitch in the north of England. It's 1894. There are no gloves on your hands. There is no penalty box painted around you. There is no rule, not one, that stops the man charging at you full speed from smashing you, shoulder first, into the back of your own goal. And if he does, if he knocks you, the ball, and your dignity over that line together, the goal counts. The crowd cheers, and you get up, spit out the mud, and wait for him to do it again. This was the job. This was goalkeeping. Today, a goalkeeper is the most protected man on a football pitch. A striker can't so much as lean on Allison or Ederson without the referee blowing up. Modern keepers wear gloves engineered with latex grip palms. They earn hundreds of thousands of pounds a week. They have specialist goalkeeping coaches, and they're so safe and so comfortable that we now ask them to calmly pass the ball out from the back like a midfielder. But for the first 50 years of football's existence, none of that existed. No gloves, no protection, barely any rules at all. So, how did goalkeepers actually survive? Let's start with something that sounds impossible. For the first 8 years of organized football, there was no goalkeeper. None. When the Football Association wrote the very first rulebook in 1863, it didn't mention a goalkeeper once. In fact, it banned everyone from using their hands. The goal was simply defended by whichever defender happened to be standing closest to it. No special player, no special powers, no gloves to even think about. And it gets stranger the further back you go. Before the rules were unified, there was no standard goal size. A goal might be the width of 2 trees. It might be an actual door. And in some early school games, the team would just stuff up to 15 players in front of the goal at once, and being sent to guard the goal was considered a punishment, a job handed to the least athletic boys who couldn't keep up with the running. The word goalkeeper only starts showing up in match reports from English schools like Shrewsbury in 1857 and Rossall in 1858. And even then, it just meant the lad nearest the back. The dedicated goalkeeper as a real, separate role wasn't invented on purpose. It was almost an accident. It wasn't until 1871 that the FA finally wrote a rule allowing one player to handle the ball for the protection of his goal. But here's the part that's hard to believe as a modern football fan. That 1871 rule let the goalkeeper handle the ball, but not just in the box. He could pick it up anywhere in his own half. Imagine a keeper today sprinting to the halfway line and catching the ball in his hands. That was completely legal, and it stayed legal for over 40 years, until 1912 finally restricted handling to the penalty area we know today. And the danger? The danger was built right into the laws of the game. In early football, the shoulder charge wasn't a foul, it was a feature. You could legally barge an opponent who didn't even have the ball, and goalkeepers had no special protection from it. So if a keeper caught the ball, a forward was completely within his rights to shoulder charge him over the goal line keeper, ball, and all in the goal would stand. Think about what that means. The single most popular attacking tactic of the era wasn't a clever pass or a curling shot. It was catch the keeper holding the ball and physically launch him into his own net. There were no gloves to grip with either. The first goalkeeper gloves weren't patented until 1885 by an Englishman named William Sykes. They were made of leather, and the football world basically ignored them. Keepers kept playing with bare hands, catching a heavy, waterlogged leather ball in the freezing rain with nothing but their skin for decades afterward. Grip gloves with rubber and latex palms wouldn't become normal until the 1960s and 70s. So with no protection and almost no rules in your favor, how did anyone survive in goal? The answer, for one man, was simple. You became so terrifying that nobody dared charge you. Meet William Foulke. Born in 1874, he signed for Sheffield United in 1894 for the grand sum of £10. And he was enormous. Depending on the year, he stood around 6'2" to 6'4" and weighed over 20 stone, roughly 125 to 150 kilograms. He was almost certainly the heaviest man ever to play for England. In an age when the main way to beat a keeper was to shoulder charge him into the net, Foulke was an immovable mountain. Forwards still tried. They almost never succeeded. One newspaper described a forward rushing through on goal only to be paralyzed by the sight of him and shooting weakly straight into his hands. When opponents annoyed him, Foulke didn't just save the ball, he picked the forwards up and threw them bodily into his own goal. In one famous match against Liverpool in 1898, a striker named George Allen kept barging him. So Foulke grabbed Allen by the leg and turned him completely upside down. The referee gave a penalty, but the point was made. He once swung on his own crossbar in the middle of a game and snapped it clean in two. And after losing a disputed FA Cup final in 1902, he left the dressing room with no clothes on and chased the referee through the stadium. The terrified official locked himself in a broom cupboard, and it took a group of FA officials to stop Felke from ripping the door off its hinges. He was so famous, so huge, and such a crowd puller that when he moved to Chelsea, the club placed two small boys behind his goal to make him look even bigger and to fetch stray balls. Those boys are widely credited as the origin of something every football fan knows today: ball boys. Falke won 2 FA Cups and a league title. He played football and professional cricket, and he survived a position with no rules and no gloves the only way the era really allowed, by being more dangerous than the danger. But you can't build a sport on men throwing each other into nets forever. Slowly, the game changed. In 1912, keepers were finally restricted to handling only inside their own penalty area, no more catching at the halfway line. Over the following decades, the laws turned hard against charging a goalkeeper, until eventually the keeper became untouchable inside his box. Gloves with real grip arrived in the 1960s and 70s, made popular by greats like Sepp Maier, and by the 1990s, they were precision-engineered pieces of equipment. And then football kept evolving the role in the other direction entirely. In 1992, the backpass rule stopped keepers from picking up a deliberate pass from a teammate, forcing them to use their feet. Today, that has produced the sweeper keeper. Goalkeepers like Manuel Neuer and Ederson, who act as an extra defender, who pass better than some midfielders, who start attacks instead of just surviving them. The position went from the least athletic boy shoved in goal as a punishment to one of the most expensive, most protected, most technically skilled roles on the entire pitch. And that's the strange beauty of it. If you want to understand how far football has come, don't look at the strikers. Look at the goalkeeper. The keeper is the position where you can actually measure how the game grew up. Once, he was a nameless boy guarding a doorway with his bare hands, who could be legally launched into his own net while the crowd roared. Today, he wears engineered gloves, stands in a protected box no one is allowed to touch him in, earns a fortune, and is trusted to build the play like an artist. The modern goalkeeper has everything the old one never did: rules, protection, science, respect. He is safe. He is comfortable. He is free to be brilliant instead of just brave. But for the first 50 years of this sport, surviving in goal wasn't about being the best. It was about being the toughest man on the pitch and praying the rules would one day catch up to protect you. They finally did.